Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Perfect.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to introduce our guest, and first I want to thank the community engagement team for organizing this, and so much has gone into that, and it's a very important topic, so we're really glad as a church to be hosting this, and hope you'll learn a lot. There is going to be a reception following this event, and that will be in the parish hall, which is just over there. Also, if you're not used to our space, we have our restrooms are in this space over here as well. So, without further ado, Ramona McIntyre grew up in Miami, Florida, though she is called many places home, including Paris, New York, California, and now Connecticut. She holds a BA in Communications and Marketing with a minor in Business Administration from Hunter College in New York City. Previously, she worked in the economic development field and has been an active part of service groups, including Lions Club and Rotary, which she credits for igniting her passion to serve people. Inspired by the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ramona searched for an organization whose leaders were motivated by justice and humanity. At Love 146, she found both and is excited to work with the team to accomplish the mission of ending child trafficking and exploitation. So join me in welcoming Ramona. Thank you.
So much. Can you hear me? Is it on? I can't tell. We're good. Okay. And I also want to introduce my colleague Andres. He is the newest member of our development team. He's been with us since October, I think. October, and he and I work very closely together. So feel free to say hi to him as well. And thank you for having us here, Janet. Thank you for organizing this. This has been amazing. We love to go out into the community and speak about our work and educate folks on what trafficking is and what trafficking is not, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there. And while I go through these slides, feel free to ask questions. Just raise your hand. There's a microphone there, and we can pass the mic around and ask Q&A as we go along, and then at the end as well, if questions arise while we're going through the slides. So Love 146 is an anti-trafficking human services organization. We were founded over 20 years ago in 2003. And we started in the Philippines with a survivor care home there. We were started by a group of funders who went to Southeast Asia to learn more about the issue of trafficking, and specifically child trafficking. And they came home and decided that something needed to be done in order to stop what was happening. And so they opened up the survivor care home in the Philippines, which is the Round Home for Girls. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. So human trafficking involves the use of force, fraud, and coercion to exploit human beings for labor or commercial sex purposes. However, when it's a child, force, fraud, and coercion do not need to be present. It's just, a child can't give consent. And so just the act of trading sex for something of value is considered child trafficking. This is a stat from the International Labor Organization, and please know that these are estimates because child trafficking and human trafficking is a very underground crime, and it only recently, 20 years ago, got a global definition. And so we communities are catching up to the definition. So it is estimated that there are about 50 million people who are being exploited globally at this moment. 12% are in sexual exploitation, and the majority are in forced labor or forced marriages. Of those 50 million, it's estimated that about 10 million are children. And so from those 10 millions, 21% are in sexual exploitation circumstances, and 25 are other forms of exploitation. Here in the United States, we have a database that is managed by Polaris, who is another anti-trafficking organization. They run the anti-trafficking hotline, which I have the number for you at the end of the slides. And this is the map that they created to show where calls are coming from, and where and calls being from members of the community, from Department of Children and Families, and from police services. And you'll see that in coastal communities, there's a lot, in coastal communities and bigger cities, there are a lot more instances of trafficking. And as we get into the country, there's a lot less. And so we tend to think, oh, you know, there's more trafficking in New York City because it's a big city, or there's more trafficking in LA because you have access to the border or highways and things like that. I hear it often about Bristol and the 91 corridor that goes up to Massachusetts and to New York, you know, merge with 95 to go to New York, and that's a little bit of a misconception. Really, trafficking happens everywhere. And in places where we see those green, blue locations, it's more likely that folks don't have the resources, or communities don't have the resources to, number one, identify what trafficking really is, or to provide the services, or they haven't caught up with laws. So for example, here in Connecticut, a child cannot be persecuted for a sex crime, for prostitution. We don't do that anymore because we know that a child cannot give consent. If a minor is engaging in commercial sex, they are being trafficked. Does anybody have questions about the map or anything? Polaris, no? Cool. We'll keep going. So this is a video I have for you guys. There's a couple throughout the presentation, and it just talks about how we just talked about that, you know, the misconception about trafficking being high in XYZ city.
Hi, I'm Marilyn. January is National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and I'm back with another fact today. You'll often hear about human trafficking hotspots or a hotbed of human trafficking in the news, and people have it in their heads that certain cities are number one or number two. But the reality is that trafficking occurs wherever there are people. And the good news is that reports of human trafficking could actually go up in places where there is additional research, training, or even an awareness campaign about the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Trafficking is a serious problem, but Love 146 and so many others are coming together to end it. The more you know, the better activist you can be, and the better you can work in your own community to make children safer.
Exactly. So the more we know, the more misconceptions that we get correct, the easier and the better it is for children and communities to stay safe. And then when we're talking about safety for kids, we have to think about the risk factors. What makes a child more vulnerable or more susceptible to trafficking? Lack of a support system and connection is a big one. Trauma or normalization of sexual abuse is a big one. Being part of a marginalized population, and again, that being part of a marginalized population kind of goes along with lack of a support system. So when children don't have safe adults around them who are looking out for their best interests, it's very easy for a child to get groomed and fall victim to trafficking. Coming from a broken home or where there's instances of neglect, this is also another higher vulnerability case, or being in the life, or having family who are in the life. And in the life is just a term that is used when people are being trafficked. So if somebody is being trafficked, they say, I'm in the life. And then simply being a child, really. Our brains don't finish forming until we're 25 years old. And until then, we are so susceptible to grooming and lies and manipulation that just being a child in and of itself makes you more vulnerable for trafficking. I always give the example that, when I was 12, 13, 14, my dream was to become a model. I was like, I know I'm only 5 feet tall, but one day I'm gonna be 5'7" and I will be a model. And so if somebody came up to me and said, you're so beautiful, you could be a model, I'd be like, oh my God, me? Or for boys, it's with sports, right? Like, you're so talented at basketball, like, I'm sure you could play for the NBA. And that's how groomers and traffickers hook kids, is by they throw this line and then they reel them in with compliments and say, you're so great, you're so amazing, you're so beautiful, you're so smart, you're so funny. And kids don't know better. They don't have that schema to think, maybe they're doing something wrong, or why are they saying this to me? Because they don't know. And so they fall victim to traffickers much easier than an adult. So I have another video for you about trafficking and kidnapping. Very often we associate trafficking with kidnapping. We always we have this image in our head of the white van coming by and somebody popping out and putting you in the white van and taking you and kidnapping you, and then that becomes a trafficking situation. Or there's also a lot of people always reference the movie Taken and say, I've watched Taken, I know about trafficking. And in real life, it's very different. The kids that that social workers at Love 146 have worked with are oftentimes still living at home with mom and dad or with their foster parents. And parents may have no idea that their kids are being exploited. So I'll play this video from Shirley.
Hey, I'm Shirley. We're back today with another fact about child trafficking. Trafficking often does not involve kidnapping. One sign of trafficking can be a drop-off in attendance at work, at school, or extracurricular activities. However, sometimes youth can continue to go to school, live at home, and participate in after-school activities, all while being trafficked. The more you know about the realities of trafficking, the better you'll be at keeping children safe.
Any questions so far that we can answer? Okay. So the vision of Love 146 is to end child trafficking and exploitation, nothing less. And we do this through 3 different programs that we have at Love 146. The first one is Survivor Care. It's our US Survivor Care, which is based here in Connecticut. Our offices are in New Haven, so not too far away. And this is where our headquarters have always been. So after our founders came back from the Philippines, because again, there tends to be this thinking that trafficking does not happen here. Trafficking is not happening in my community, trafficking is happening over there. When in fact we just learned that trafficking happens everywhere, unfortunately. And so after the founders came back and started the Philippine Survivor Care, they learned, oh my goodness gracious, trafficking is happening here as well. And so they started our US Survivor Care in 2014. And that has 4 different sections. It has the rapid response, which is the very first step. So usually we get a call from mom and dad, from Department of Children and Families, or a teacher, or somebody who notices that something is not quite okay. They give us a call and they say, I think this child may be being trafficked or is potentially at high risk of being trafficked. And so one of our social workers will go and have a meeting that lasts about an hour with the youth and the adult, the youth's adult. And our social workers take a backpack and they do kind of an assessment. And the point of the backpack is to break the ice. If you've ever tried to talk to a teenager, they don't open up very easily. If you've tried to talk to a teenager who has trauma, they tend to not open up at all. And so this backpack is used as that icebreaker, because our social workers always say, you know, it's so easy, it's so nice to have the backpack, because you could say, hey, you know, do you want to look at what's in the bag? And they always say yes, because everything is for them. So yes. And in that bag, they have coloring books, they have personal hygiene items, they have socks, and the number one best thing that everybody loves is a teddy bear. And so they get to talk, and they get to build confidence and have that rapport where eventually the child will, and sometimes it doesn't just take an hour. Sometimes a rapid response can take a couple of days or a couple of visits. And so once our social workers know exactly what's going on and what the exploitation or risk of exploitation is, then they get put into long-term services if there's a fit. In long-term services, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it lasts anywhere from a year to a year and a half, where our social workers will work independently with children and help them do so many things. It's getting back into school, it's moving on from the trauma, it's really rebuilding and regaining that self-esteem for a child. I'll tell you more about that in just a hot second. After long-term services, they can move into our transitional services, which is combined with employment and education and two generation. So in employment and education, a lot of our kids are still in high school, and so it's helping them get back into school. Or if you've graduated high school and want to go to college, it's helping you do all the crazy applications to get into college. I have an 18-year-old who just graduated high school, and we just went through all of the SATs and filling out applications and making sure you have all your financials in order. And if you've never done that, it can be so overwhelming. And it's so overwhelming when you open up a course catalog and you see the price per credit for something, and you say, oh my gosh, no, I can't do this. And that's even more triggering for a child who's been in a trafficking situation. And so is getting a job. Kids, it's difficult to go and be making minimum wage when you were making more money previously, but you were getting abused. So our employment and education social workers really work hand in hand with kids who've been through long-term care to help them overcome these barriers and these huge challenges. And then we have Two Generation, which is maybe my favorite program that we have. This is for kids who've gone through our care, kids or adults who've gone through our care and are becoming parents. So children of people who've been in trafficking situations have a 25% more probability of being trafficked themselves, and then parents have a higher probability of going into re-exploitation as well, and we don't want that. And so we're here for our kids. We never close a case. So if you were 12 when you came through Love 146's doors, and now you're 25 and you're having your first baby and you need help, you can always come back to us. And so we provide support, parenting resources, making sure that you have money or you have filled out the right forms and have the right support, SNAP benefits, to get SNAP benefits so that you can get formula for your baby, so that you can get childcare and still continue to go to work. So this is all that we do at 2Gen. And so this is the map of our long-term services. So like I said, it's about a year to a year and a half that the kids are in the care of the social worker. One of the questions I get often is, what happens? What's the work that goes on with the social worker and the youth? And the honest truth is, I don't know. We have very strict HIPAA laws. And so actually today, Andres and I were at the office on a Wednesday, which is usually when the social workers are there, and they had their meeting, and we had to go into a separate room so that we don't hear any of the things that they're talking about the kids, because we're just that caring and supportive of the children. We don't want any of their privacy to be exposed. But there's the assessment period to see what they've gone through, what kind of care they need, and then the child and the social worker will write their care plan, and which includes goals and what you want to do in the next six to 9 months. And then they work through that plan for the next 6 to 9 months. One of the goals could be going back to school, 4 times a week, or getting a job or things like that. And then they're in supportive care where there's less meetings, and there's just, the kids at this point are really building up and perfecting what they've learned with their social worker. And then they go into sustained care, which is forever, because like I said, we never close a case. And so that is when they can always come back to employment and education and to Gen. So here in Connecticut, we've worked with almost 1,000 children. We're at about 970-ish. So we're almost at 1,000 kids that we've worked with in the past 10 years since we started our US Survivor Care Program. And we have a map of how many kids we have worked with in each county. When we started our social care, US Survivor Care, we started with one social worker, who is now the VP of Strategy. And 10 years later, we have 20 social workers, which is great, but it also means that there's that much of a need. Each social worker works with only 5 kids at a time, and that's so that kids get very specific, very personalized care. We don't have a brick and mortar location, we don't have a safe home, and so our social workers are going through the whole state of Connecticut to go where the kids are. So another thing we always say is we go where you are. Some of the kids are in foster care and they change homes a lot. Cool, our social workers are gonna go and meet you where you are. And in spite of having a growing number of social workers, we still have a wait list of 30 kids that was confirmed to us today, which I think is the lowest in the past 4 years that it's been. So again, it's bittersweet. It's the lowest number of kids that we've had on a waiting list. I've seen the waiting list be as high as 80, but it's also something that we don't want to have. We don't want to have 30 children who need care be waiting. And Love 146 is the go-to nonprofit or non-government organization that the state of Connecticut calls when there are at-risk youth or youth who have been confirmed to have been trafficked.
I do have a question.
Absolutely.
How long has the waiting list been for an individual child or children, the range?
Time-wise?
Yeah.
It could be up to 6 months. Yeah, because since we have such a finite number of social workers and they all work with the kids for such a long time, it does take a long time for that process to end and a child to be able to come back. Yeah. And here's myth number 3, which is about gender. We often think, myself included, it's girls who are trafficked. When we picture trafficking, we think of girls, but boys are also trafficked. And the number that we have for that is so low, for the data that we have for that is so low because boys often don't report that they're being abused. So.
Hello, I'm JP, and we're back with another fact about child trafficking. Sex trafficking is not just a women and girls issue. About 15% of kids in our survivor care have been boys or non-binary youth. We believe that the actual rate of male victims is way higher than this. But until there is less stigma for male survivors, we cannot know how many boys are being exploited, and many of them will go without help. The more you understand child trafficking, the better you'll be able to see victims and keep children safe, no matter their gender.
Okay, so before I move on to U.S. prevention, does anybody have any survivor care question? Yes.
About the wait list, do you guys, is it typically triage based
Yeah, it's based on referral and timeline of referral. Yeah, because again, we just don't have it would be lovely, you know, if we had like, oh, this social worker has room for one more child, but usually all our social workers are maxed out, and we make sure to max them out at 5 and that seems very strict, but yeah, we want each child to be able to have that one-on-one individual attention and get better.
So you wouldn't necessarily choose like someone who would be in traffic versus someone at risk, like first or second?
Any other questions? Yes.
Can we ask you not to talk until you get a microphone? We're trying to live stream it. Yeah. Do your social workers get involved in testifying against the perpetrators?
Yep, absolutely.
And you don't have to wait 6 months to do that?
No, absolutely.
From the moment it's reported, you can testify?
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things that does happen in survivor care, is that we do, our social workers do work with their youth and accompany them to court cases and testify on behalf of them, and really advocate for them in court, so that they can get, you know, sometimes there's been instances where we've worked with a child and we're able to get her restitution, so she has money and that she can live with for the crimes that these people are doing against children. Okay, so moving on. Our second program is our U.S. prevention education. And then again, back to our vision is the ending of child trafficking and exploitation, nothing less. And so while we were taking care of kids, it was like, okay, we keep taking care of kids, but what are we doing to stop this? And so this is where U.S. prevention education came in. And we do that through a curriculum called Not a Number. Not a Number is a 5-week curriculum that is taught in middle schools and high schools, or to middle school and high school aged children. They don't need to be in a school setting. It could be anywhere where children are served. So sometimes there's in detention centers and DCF places, things like that. But the majority are in schools. And so the program was written with Love 146. It was inputted by survivors, and it was co-written by the University of New Haven. And so this 5-week program, the goal of it is to inform kids on how to stay safe and how to prevent trafficking in their lives. So it's 5 modules, it's 5 different weeks. We train teachers how to teach the curriculum and how to teach the course, so that then they can go and teach it to their students in their classrooms. We also do a teaching of the trainer, where we have trainers who will teach other trainers, and so our groups get bigger and bigger. Question? Yes.
At what age do you recommend children receive that?
Middle school, high school. At what age do we recommend? So I would be, as early as 6th grade. And it's very, it's very, very customizable. Thank you. So you could easily not say like really ugly parts or really strong parts to perhaps a 12-year-old student. But yeah, so it's designed, the program itself, the curriculum is designed for youth serving professionals, so a teacher. I would not be able to get certified in Not a Number. I don't teach kids. I have no idea how to teach kids. So I would not be able to get certified. It facilitates skill building. And so yes. Oh, you need a mic.
Case managers where you have kids that may be at risk to be trafficked, the case manager can be trained to also teach the curriculum?
Yes. That's a great question. So it facilitates skill building so that kids can have these resources kind of under their belt and say, oh, I've heard of this, I've seen this, I know what grooming is. because I was taught it. So, for example, since COVID, online trafficking has skyrocketed, and again, this goes back to the issue of like, but you're not kidnapped. No, you don't have to be kidnapped. You can be at home while you're being exploited. And a lot of the children nowadays are exploited through their phones and through gaming. Like, I don't know, I don't game, but in gaming councils, you're able to chat with other people. And, you know, Facebook, all these social media apps that you may have, if you have it set to public, then anybody can contact you. And so that is one of the very big ways that children are trafficked nowadays, is a groomer will DM you and say, hey, how are you? You know, and start that friendship with you. And if you don't know, if you don't have the skills to recognize, hey, this might not be a safe person, then you more easily fall victim to trafficking than a child who's been through the curriculum, who knows step one, day one, all your settings should be private. We consider all audiences, so like we learned, trafficking is not just a girl issue, it happens to boys and non-binary youth as well, and so that's all written into the curriculum as well and into the program, where we consider all genders, and we talk and we say, you know, we give examples and case studies of things that happened to boys and to girls. And lastly, it's research-based and it's going through a third-party evaluation, so it's getting evaluated by the University of New Hampshire and the CDC, which is super exciting. Stay tuned for that. We have about 2 more years. And then our last program is our Philippines Survivor Care, which is the program that started it all. So this was started in 2003 by our founders and our co-founders. And we have 2 homes there now, the Round Home for girls and the White Home for boys. And this is in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, and it's very much an enclosed campus where kids do receive the care that they need, top to bottom. Anything that a child needs, wants, could think of, we provide it there. And we have a safe home in the Philippines because it's needed there. In the Philippines, they don't have the federal resources that we have. You know, they don't have Department of Children and Families, they don't have SNAP benefits. And so we're able to provide in these 2 homes all the care that children need. So if they need education, they need therapies, it's all provided for them there. They have a farm. And they have goats. They raise goats on the property. And our co-founder, Rob Morris, goes there often. And he says that, you know, there's always a baby goat named Rob. Like every year they name a baby goat after him, and it's one of his favorite things. And one story that he tells, which I know I'm not going to do it justice, but one story that he tells is when he went to visit the Round Home one year, there was a small child, she was about 4, who had just gotten into the Round Home, and she was sitting in a corner and putting dirt on herself, and she wouldn't look at people. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to be touched. She just didn't want to exist, is what the caregivers in the Philippines told Rob. And so she was putting dirt on herself just so she could disappear, which is, when we think about a 4-year-old girl, it's soul crushing. He went back the next year, and a little girl ran up to him, and she was just so excited because the goats had just had babies, and you have to go see this kid named Rob, and, you know, they're so funny, and da-da-da, and you know, Rob followed her and was really excited, and that was the same girl. So it was from a year, you know, where she just was sitting down putting dirt on herself, to a year later, she was so excited and wanted to dance and wanted to jump with the baby goat. So this is the type of care and therapy that they provide in the Philippines. It's very special. So yeah, any questions about that? No? Okay. All right, this is another myth.
January is Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and we're back with another fact for you about child trafficking. Rescue is oftentimes not the only or best way to freedom. Many children in our Survivor Care program are not physically removed from their exploitation by law enforcement. Instead, they're connected to Love 146 by caring adults who notice something's wrong, and sometimes they even reach out themselves and ask for help. Love 146 equips youth with the skills to safely navigate exploitative situations, and we train professional adults to recognize and respond to children who are vulnerable or being exploited. The more you understand trafficking, the more you can make your community safe for children.
Okay, so some resources for you. This is the phone number and the text number to the Polaris's trafficking hotline. If you see something, say something. Even if you're unsure, if something in your gut says this does not feel right, I highly recommend and ask you to please call the hotline or text, and they'll respond immediately. And I'll send these slides to you so you guys have all the information that you need. And then, so what can you do as an informed community member? It starts with what we're all doing here today. It starts with learning what is trafficking, what is not trafficking, and how does trafficking happen in places. Number 2 is volunteer. At Love 146, we don't have volunteer opportunities, unfortunately, but we highly recommend that you volunteer with a youth organization and be a safe adult for a child. You could support a nonprofit, you could support us, you could support another anti-trafficking organization. We're all in the cause together. And then lastly, engage your community, which again is this, tell your friends. Read a book about trafficking or where there's situations of trafficking. There's one called Demon Copperhead that's out right now that's very popular, that has several instances or examples of child trafficking in it. So, it might be a fun book club. So engage your community and talk about it and say, hey, I learned this today. And did you know that trafficking doesn't happen when there's kidnapping? And did you know, just really talk to your friends about it, because the more you know, the more we can spot it, the more we can stop it. And okay, this is my last myth.
Child trafficking is not actually a new phenomena, but caring about it is. Human trafficking wasn't actually a term that was discussed commonly until the 90s, and it was in the year 2000 that the UN and the US actually defined trafficking as a crime. You might hear people say, why is human trafficking such a big issue these days? This is getting so much worse. This wasn't happening when I was little. But it was. It was happening when you were little. It feels like things are really bad when you hear about human trafficking in the news and when you see it all over the place, but people weren't even seeing it before. So the fact that you're seeing it is a huge step. And all the feelings that you have when you see it are human and natural, and what you choose to do with those feelings is moving us forward, and it's putting us closer to ending it. Human Trafficking Prevention Month is coming to a close, but there are a lot of amazing people that are journeying alongside children as Love 146 monthly donors, and you can join them in prioritizing this issue every month.
That's it. That's all I have for you guys. All right. Do we have any questions? Yes. Oh, we need a mic.
Do you know how many kids are in the homes in the Philippines?
There's about, I don't know the exact number actually, but I want to say there's about 20, 25.
And do they live there for a long time, or do they graduate? How does that work?
They live there for as long as they need to live there. Yeah, as long when they have a safe space or a safe home, they can go. Safe home, not in our safe home. Yeah.
I was wondering, where do you get your funding to pay your counselors, and what kind of training do they need?
That's a great question. So by counselors, do you mean our social workers?
Yes.
Yeah. So our social workers need to be licensed social workers in order to work with our children or work with the kids that come into our care. And as far as funding, we have several funding sources. So a big part of our funding is the federal government. They provide a lot of support for our social workers, for our prevention education program so we can be in school districts. And then we have private funding. So that would be individuals like yourselves who are very generously donating. So from private donations, we receive about $5 million a year. And then we also have some corporate partnerships and as well as some private grants.
Somebody asked when they came in, where did the name come from? Love 146.
That's a great question. So about 22 years ago, our co-founders took that trip to Southeast Asia, and they had heard about the problem of child trafficking. And like most of us, they went far away. They went over there where we've heard that it's so prevalent to learn more about the issue. While they were learning about the issue, they were invited by law enforcement to pose as traffickers while they raided a brothel that they knew was trafficking children. And, you know, Rob, who's our co-founder, he always says that he was like, yeah, I'll do it. I want to take down these guys for sure. And law enforcement was like, yeah, but you can't lose it. When you go in there, you have to, you know, stay in your character as a trafficker. And they did it. So they went in to the brothel, posing as traffickers. And the first thing that Rob says has impacted him was, number one, when you went in, there was a two-way mirror. And so they were on one side, and on the other side were children in red dresses with numbers on their chests. And then number two was that they got a menu, and on the menu was the number of the child, and on the other side was the corresponding sex acts that child would perform, which is disgusting. And so Rob says he was like, I really had to keep my cool. As you can imagine how difficult that would be, just to read that menu and to see these kids. And so he says that the kids that he saw seemed just very despondent. There was a grainy television on that was showing cartoons because these were little kids. And the kids were kind of watching, you know, kind of waiting and watching the cartoons, except for one girl who he says was staring defiantly almost through the two-way mirror. Like she knew that there were other people on the other side, but she was standing like this, and he says he saw defiance in her eyes and strength and courage, and she wore the number 146. Unfortunately, we don't know what happened to her that night after the raid, but every day we work for her and to honor her and hope that she is safe and that she found freedom and safety in her life. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So I went to the round table on Saturday at Blackstone this past Saturday, and it was really interesting to see the other organizations that you work with, the underground, people from the underground were there. So could you just sort of give us a feel for how your organizations work together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we at Level 146A, we're not in this alone. We have a big table approach. We're not in a vacuum. You know, we don't have all the answers to child trafficking. And also our focus is on child trafficking. There are other organizations that do really, really great work who work with women. For example, PET down in Greenwich. They have a survivor care home for adult women, and they teach them work skills. And so we work very closely with them, always sharing information, sharing things about legislative acts and things that we may need to stand up and do some advocacy work for. The Underground is another great organization that works here in Connecticut, and they work with also adults. A lot of the kids that we work with also work with the Underground. The Underground actually provides us a lot of our rapid response backpacks that we get, and they provide gifts for the kids in our care. So when there's a milestone, our social workers will give the kids a gift, or for birthdays and things like that. The Underground provides us with that as well. And again, always sharing information, always sharing resources, so that we can all, because we are all working on it together. We can't, it's a big job and we can't do it by ourselves. Yeah. Anyone else?
So I just want to thank you for being here, and this is a very important topic, and we have learned a lot. So, so thank you, and thank you for the resources for how we can get involved. So we really appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
So on our community engagement team, we have Linda Vincent, who is very talented, and she made these cards that you received when you came in, and also the pillows that we're going to give away as sort of door prizes. So how many do we have? 5. Okay. So I understand I'm supposed to... All right. 14. Who has 14? Buddy? 14? Anybody? All right. Oh, you do. Okay. All right. Good. Good. All right. All right. 19. You got, okay, good. $18. Okay. Good. Two. Is somebody? No. Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. You want me to draw another? Okay. All right. 10. Okay. 17. Oh. 16, 17, any? All right. 8. Oh, Loretta, yes. Okay. Okay, that's it? All right, good. All right, well, thank you. Thank you. Jen, and we have lots and lots of food, so please do join us in the parish hall.